Welcome, everyone, to the Moriah Nightly News. May the 4th be with you on this Monday evening, May 4th, 2026. From the nation to Moriah, here are the top stories for this evening. The Iran war is still in its tentative ceasefire, and I say tentative because that is as shaky as could be at this point. Um, Over the weekend, there had been considerations from the Iranians that looked like they were open to coming back to the negotiating table. And if I had to guess, although the Wall Street Journal did not say explicitly, largely because of the economic toll, no doubt, they are concerned about that. In fact, I would be willing to bet they are very concerned about that because of the fact that they are, aside from last week's reporting that they were attempting to ship oil to China by rail, they are attempting to bypass the blockade by kind of going up the, if you look on the map, it would be the northern end of the strait around this little island, around this narrow passageway. Although the Strait of Hormuz is itself pretty narrow, so that um, looks to be something to keep an eye on. They were looking to talk over the weekend, and then that did not seem to go in that direction because of what took place today. And today they basically threw what appeared to be, there were a few drones and I believe missiles that went towards the UAE, that's the United Arab Emirates. That is one of those neighboring nations. No doubt, I'm sure that they are upset because the UAE just left OPEC. It was announced that they are leaving OPEC, and the UAE is one of the top producing countries in that, I guess you'd say, alliance. And which, of course, interestingly to note, Russia is in OPEC as well, which I did not know. I just assumed it was all of the Arab nations, but Russia is in that organization as well. So that makes me trust it even less. But this was in the midst of the United States attempting to push merchant ships through the Strait of Hormuz. The president had announced that, be that late last night or early this morning, that the U.S. would begin to do that. There were at least two merchant ships that did make it through, um, but not without uh, Iranian retaliation. They did not consider it, or they being the United States, did not call it a breaking or a violation of the ceasefire. So that is still in effect on paper. And if I had to guess, to put as much economic pressure as possible on the Iranians, not just the economic pressure alone, but also that is in terms of financial hardship in dollars and cents wise there. Um, if you recall, last week I had not done the math. I did do the math tonight, and at $400 million a day, which is what's being estimated by the Treasury Department and others, that is about, since the start of the ceasefire, which was on April 8th, is when the original ceasefire was put in place. If you remember, it was 14 days, and then the president sort of made it open ended after that. So we're about at day 26, so we're about at 30 days of that. But so at 26 days, if you do the math, it's about, or roughly $10.4 billion. that Iran has lost in economically, and so unless they are getting that from somewhere else, be it Russia, be it China, that is a huge economic loss. And so far, it seems that that oil is not going anywhere, even with Russia and China um, having in the past been a supporter of Iran. The Wall Street Journal also noted, and this was something that I had no idea about, was that previously these teapot oil refiners, what they're called, I assume that's a reference to Chinese tea in some way. I don't know. Um, these were basically this was an illegal method of uh, Iranian oil getting to China and being refined there. Now, they are still supplied for now with oil that was there basically prior to the blockade being put in place, the naval blockade, but that supply will likely run out soon, which is why China is probably putting pressure on when they have been putting pressure on Iran to negotiate or basically do something about the situation because they're going to lose their supply of oil. So the point being with all of that is that all of that is a lot more at stake here than just a regional uh, Middle Eastern conflict, with the balance of power being pushed, tested, with all of the world players having some form of stake in the game, and the United States coming out on top, the United States and Israel in this case coming out on top, will be beneficial in the long run to all of us, whether that means paying more at the pump in the short term or not. And the challenge is that the Iranians are very much aware that the president is under this pressure economically and politically to get the price of gas down by the midterms. Because as I've stated before, Americans do not like economic warfare. Um, we likely never have liked it. And that is something that is being tested that I'm sure the Chinese are taking very much note of. On the note of tariffs, they are undercutting I guess you could say, the trade war in Africa by um, basically allowing free trade with China in Africa or to the African nations, um, except for one, and I couldn't write down the name. It wasn't one that I recognized, basically because of its diplomatic ties to Taiwan. So you see how sneaky the Chinese government is there. Um, you can't trust the Chinese government either. So I mentioned that because these are all adversaries of the United States. No matter what the bigger media outlets will tell you, there is far more at stake here than Israel dragged the U.S. into this war, or it's Trump's war, or all this other stupidity and nonsense that the left propagates, because that's quite frankly what it is. So, as mentioned, the UAE did pull out of OPEC. That is scheduled for Friday. They announced it already, but I guess the formal paperwork and whatnot, that all goes through. Um, Still looking briefly at what's going on with Hezbollah and Israel over there. Um, that I did not follow as closely as I should have. Um, they had negotiated that ceasefire, and it kind of was basically just on paper. U.S. negotiators are pushing for that the president of Lebanon and Netanyahu to meet again, be that in Washington or on other ter- some other meeting ground, you might say. But that has not materialized as of yet. Um, there are basically questions as to whether Israel can handle that situation militarily. And based on the Wall Street Journal's article there, it seems as though that situation is far more complex than what we might make it out to be here in the American media. That would certainly not surprise me there because we are far removed from that. What is clear is that Hezbollah is 100% backed by Iran in the past, as well as Ben Hamas and other terrorist organizations. And it will be interesting to see with the economic warfare playing out if that money will dry up soon, probably sooner rather than later, along with the weaponry supply and all of that, because I doubt that Iran will have much left after this conflict is over and we're done with them. So the German chancellor, of course, it was noted on Friday at the top of the broadcast on Friday, because we got the headline in that the German chancellor was or had been uh, going back and forth with the president and making some provocative statements there. And in response, that president withdrew 5,000 troops from Germany. Not necessarily in direct response, although I'm sure that was part of it. Of course, a bigger part of that has been Europe's overall response to the conflict in Iran and either not coming to our aid or being outright hostile in not allowing the American military to use mili- any European installations in Europe. That being said, the bigger worry for Germany is not the 5,000 troops that were withdrawn, but is the loss of that Tomahawk missile battalion that kind of went with that the president pulled out of there. And I do wonder where that hardware will go, if it will go to the Middle East or elsewhere, what they will do with that. So we'll be watching that here to see what happens with that. In the Russia Ukraine front, I did find it interesting that Russia had announced a ceasefire over the weekend, um, stating that they would. Um, it was a call. It was defined by the Associated Press as a unilateral ceasefire for the 81st anniversary of the defeat of Nazi Germany. And Vladimir Zelensky, of course, followed that the Ukrainians would honor that ceasefire for that. It was 2 days. It looked like it was Friday and Saturday coming up, but they are going to honor that agreement. Those types of ceasefires are apparently commonplace at this point in the 4-year-old war in Ukraine. They break for things like the Orthodox Easter. Of course, in that region, in that part of the world, the Orthodox Church is much more established than it is, say, here in the States. But they are nevertheless breaking to observe the end of World War II. And of course, it's interesting to me as a historian to observe how much the Second World War still remains in living memory, well, particularly in this case for the Russians, um, in that part of the world. Not that it isn't here, but it seems to be fading from our collective memory here. And from on the state level, the budget is still delayed. It's been delayed for about a month now. Um, and our Democratic leadership in Albany cannot pass a budget. Of course, they wouldn't be able to pass a good one anyway. But it's still delayed, and this is about the. It looked like from what NBC5 reported, they've passed at least I think they said 9 stopgap measures to basically keep the government functional until they can reach a more permanent budget for the upcoming fiscal year. And there was some talk of concern with school districts and funding. So that will have to follow that more closely in the days ahead. The somewhat on the state and mixing, or perhaps a hybrid is the right word. The Adirondack Park Agency announced new mapping software. There was a huge article on this in the Times of Thai. You can go online, and I guess this is some kind of technology to observe basically anywhere in the Adirondack Park where how it's zoned and what its usage is, private land, all of that nonsense. I think we should just, like I said, get rid of the Adirondack Park Agency altogether, and we'd be better off. So that on that same note, the howitzer case that we've been following here at the Moriah channel and the Moriah Nightly News, there was a court, and they called it an ad. What was the word for it? An ad judiciary hearing that was postponed until the end of October, um, because the APA attorney Grace Sullivan, not that I would envy her for having to defend that horrible organization, but they asked for more time, basically to, I guess, to analyze all of the data that's coming in there from the case. And again, a lot of the concern was for the town of Lewis and the noise that that would produce in that area. So that we will see. The case was the Michael Hopmeyer is the guy's name. He runs the company, a company called Unconventional Concepts Incorporated, and he is essentially wanting to fire a howitzer or build a testing range on private land that he would pay taxes on. But apparently, that's not good enough for the controlling arm of the Adirondack Park Agency. And so, again, I would urge anyone to fight against this horrible, horrible, wicked organization. I have probably, I don't know how much more clear I could make my hatred of that group. So, with that being said, um, Dan Stack, who was just in Moriah very recently, joined fellow Republican leaders in Albany in voting for the Protect Act. This is legislation that would push back against the bail reform laws that New York State adopted around 2018, 2019, around that time frame. That was noted by the Sun Community News. They did not use that language. That was me basically summarizing that. That is what the Protect Act is designed to do. It's designed to put protections in place for those who get arrested. So get arrested. It's basically designed to roll back some of that. Uh, if I could use the term, catch and release idea that there would be some protocol to assess whether or not an offender is able to be released or could be held at a judge's discretion and things like that that would keep people safe and keep offenders off the streets. All good things, if you ask me. And on the local level, given that it was a rather slow news day, I do want to um, make everyone aware of what's going on in the community up and coming this weekend. The first of those is One is a senior project. Uh, th- this was, if for those that don't know, graduating seniors are required to form some act of community service as part of their requirements before graduation. When I graduated in 2014, it was not that long ago, by the way, long ago enough though. We were the first class to have that as a requirement at Moriah Central. And so it's a community service based program. Those prior to that maybe don't know what that is. And so every graduating senior is required to do some form of that. And I'm sure that we were our class was the first. I'm sure that since then they have refined that process to make it more either manageable or, academic or whatnot. But so with that being said, George Evans III is organizing a free community dinner at the Mineville VFW, and that is going to be this coming Saturday from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. And they are in need, he and his family are in need of donations, be that monetary or food or otherwise, and they might even take volunteer support. So that is from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. at the Mineville VFW. I would contact Tamara Evans, his mom, and I could not say enough good things about George or the young man that he has become. And he also has a band. Um, so check that out. So, and I hope he'll forgive me for not remembering his name on air, but so with also on Saturday is the Mother's Day Market, the fourth annual Mother's Day Market. I'll find that for Saturday. The Mother's Day Market at Hunter Way Farm is from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. They are having a free craft station for kids. They paint your own flower pot for moms there, and all kinds of vendors there. The flyer said that you could reserve a spot, but it looks like from what I read on the comments that that had filled up long ago based on the amount of community interest in that. Very good, very happy to see that the community has supported that, and that all of the events at Hunter Way Farm have brought the town of Moriah and probably the whole Essex County and beyond together socially, especially post COVID when everything kind of died down with that whole um, chaos. So the Old Miners Tavern is also on Saturday. So there's a lot going on Saturday around here to keep you busy. Saturday, May 9th, Andre, I can't even say that, Chevalier from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. He's going to be at the Old Miners Tavern. You won't want to miss it. It looked like, based on his poster that I saw on the Old Miners Tavern Facebook page, it looked more like it was in line with Cinco de Mayo and Latino type music. That's what it looked like. I can't say for sure, but that's what it looked like. And they're also having some deals for Cinco de Mayo with a make your own quesadilla and a chicken and bean burrito, all for $10. Or they're separate items, but for $10. So I love a good bargain. So check out the Old Miners Tavern. That's been a great thing for the community as well to have that uh, revamp and have the space reutilized. And I know Aaron put a lot of work into that to get it to where it is today. So check them out on Facebook or wherever you or social media, I guess would be the best place. So that was, of course, I ran through the headlines and I had more here on that howitzer case because I wanted to just because I just could not believe when I read this statement. Yes, I'm going to pull out the newspaper on air here. Because this statement was from this Claudia Raymer, from the executive director of Protect the Adirondacks. So this is what she wrote them in a text message, apparently. Um, we will continue building a strong case against this proposed project so that the agency board members have a strong record to deny it after the hearing, whenever the hearing takes place. It just sounded so full of hatred right off the bat for anything to do with free enterprise, anything to do with it's just wanting nothing to do with it before you give it a hearing. Guilty until proven innocent. When I was taught in school that in America we are innocent until proven guilty. So that is the Mariah Nightly News on that note for this Monday evening. And may the 4th be with you. And God bless. Good night. There we go. Okay, there we go. Damn.